Welcome, everybody. It's great to connect. We are really excited to share a little bit of details around one of our favorite new products out of Databricks, Databricks Unity Catalog. I wanted to invite along one of our experts and kind of our one of our team members that actually focuses on implementing a lot of these efforts. William, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Josh. Thanks for having me here. Excited to dive into this.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you joining. Yeah, I'm gonna defer to the smart people here, have William along to make me look a little better, but we're excited to kind of dive in and share a little bit more detail. A lot of our clients, see this new product. Databricks has a lot of great features inside of it. We love working with them, but we're really excited to kind of share a little bit more about an example. So today, we want to dive in and kind of just understand a little bit more about what is Unity Catalog and why did Databricks introduce this new way of handling some governance and data management. And then we wanted to make this real. And so we're going to use some of our, an example that we use from some of our clients in the travel and hospitality space. And William's actually going to walk us through a couple examples here. And then we'll conclude with some kind of just general thinking about who should be using this and how to integrate this into a business. We want to make this really kind of tangible for everybody. Of course, if anyone has specific questions, feel free to get in touch and we'll make sure to share. So let's kick off. William, we'd have you maybe query me a few questions. I've been talking about this with a lot of our clients. So why don't you kind of kick off a few questions that you have about Data Catalog, particularly as a business user?
Yeah, definitely. So excited to get to that demo here a little bit later about the travel data that we're going to jump into. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you, Josh, within Databricks, what is the Unity Catalog all about?
Yeah, good question. Let's start with what we're actually talking about here. So probably about a year and a half ago, you started seeing marketing out of Databricks about this new product, Unity Catalog. At its core, it's a metadata catalog or data catalog storing a few components that help data transformation and help data teams understand what they're doing with their data. There are a number of products that have existed in this space before. I think of like Informatica and Calibra with kind of legacy governance processes. This is a much lighter weight, deeper integration based on metadata that was built particularly for how Databricks implements their data processing platform, which you think about a lot of what they've done is around Delta Lake and built on top of the Lakehouse architecture. There are four specific components to what we are actually working on, kind of housed inside of the Unity Catalog environment. One is data discovery. Two is governance, and really the auditing of it. Governance is a wide kind of multi-use tool, but the ability to kind of search and discover and uncover your data. Three is lineage. Really amazing what we've been able to do with tracking transformation. Lineage is implemented incredibly well. And four is around data sharing. So this is an amazing feature if you think about having a single reference of your data and being able to provide it out to multiple different business units, all with control and visibility. That's what Unity Catalog is introducing here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, response. And it's been great to use it myself and get to learn all of those different features. But for those that are watching, but might not have had the chance to use Unity Catalog, what was Databricks trying to accomplish with
good question. Like, why does
with
this
Catalog?
exist?
Yeah,
fair enough. So Databricks, has really been leading out like two core functions when they initialized their product when they started. It was how do you help companies implement better machine learning and advanced analytics workloads and help the data prep around it. Many years ago, they started shifting to a holistic platform around how they can actually help manage, as we move to more managed ecosystem, kind of seeing this competitive ecosystem with these Snowflake and Databricks emerging. How do you become a more holistic platform? And you look at two philosophies that have emerged. One, and point fingers at Snowflake, great platform and building a great flag, but it's a very closed system. Databricks is a proprietary built system, and they do it their way, but they're building on top of open standards. Unity Catalog is a holistic build of the platform, helping with data cataloging and governance, integrating into their system, but built on open standards. And so they really wanted to address the governance. They looked at the market space in 2001 and saw a number of proprietary platforms coming up. So you think about AWS Glue Catalog or Azure Data Catalog. These are tools addressing this exact space in a much lighter weight, more integrated fashion, but noting that those are AWS and Azure proprietary built in. So they wanted to abstract a cloud agnostic standard and then using open standards. Again, going back to they built a lot of their Metastore on top of Hive or Hive Metastore. This is incredible thinking of open standards. So you have portability Their sharing is built on Delta sharing, which is an Apache standard. These are really big solutions to help make companies not get stuck into a platform while still having the benefit of a managed, kind of strategic way of building out a data architecture. So at the end of the day, it's to help data teams have more control and feasibility inside their data platform while using open standards. So that benefit that we often talk about between buy and build, where you build a data environment from scratch or buy a completely locked-in strategy, the right answer in a managed ecosystem is kind of the best of both. And that's what these platforms are trying to offer.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to watch the landscape. In the early days of data, it was optimal data warehouses, and then that evolved into the data lakes. But then there were gaps in between some of those tools, and that's where we saw some of those players like Colibra start to come in and plug those gaps. But now it looks like
or fix some endemic problems, which you remember the lake swamps that occurred. There's a new normal post that, and
yes,
we've all the promise of store every bit of data in a raw store was like the promise of 8 years ago when we got cheap storage, but that didn't solve the entire problem. That then you would just have similar problems with security, access, visibility, discoverability.
Exactly.
You honed in dead right, William. Exactly where Unity Catalog is trying to support.
And then with that, with Databricks as they're ever evolving, being on that cutting edge, and they're looking to truly be that unified platform, and Unity Catalog being a piece of that, what are some Databricks design considerations that we should keep in mind when they were building this?
Yeah, well, I talked a bit about it before, but remember the idea of why we love Databricks as a managed platform. So you get to own and maintain all your data. You can choose your cloud. You can have agnostic tool sets, but they're really big and started from open standards and open sourcing.
Yep.
So yes, they are a proprietary tool. I don't want to make any guys here, but they definitely have built on top of open source and built including investing in some of the largest data open source platforms or building with open source as a predicate of standards. But you look at the root of what Unity Catalog and the Metastore API has been Hive standards. Metastore, any Hive compatible Metastore is able to extract out the underlying data. Yeah, don't want to do that if you're building your data architecture. You want to build something and build on top of it, but they're building on open standards. So this is the design consideration Databricks thought about. They also took an approach, a kind of 3-level namespace design. You can get into the details on it, moving from Metastore to catalog, and then you have your kind of tables, views, and then soon volumes, functions. Like this is the design. Happy to do a breakout video diving into the weeds of architectural consideration.
Yep.
But effectively, when you have design considerations built on top of the Lakehouse architecture, their Delta Lake, and then you couple that with access control, like that's a big function of their group access control they've put in, you're able to design a very flexible but very industry kind of leading architectural consideration that's been tested at scale by the leading companies. This is, I think, what we see in their design consideration is very consistent with how Databricks thinks about data architecture and open standards in general.
Within terms of considering implementing the Unity store and how we should configure that, do you have any thoughts on what that looks like?
Yeah, and we spend a lot of time advising our clients on how to think about these tools and actually implementing these ourselves. It sounds like a no-brainer. I want to talk a little bit about kind of why this was rolled out.
Yeah.
There's legacy Databricks, which is just kind of how they've been supporting, and I'm using the term legacy as in pre-Unity Catalog as an integration. When you're standing up a Databricks environment, you'll see in a tenant under this, you'll see a toggle, just literally to turn on Unity Catalog. There's really no reason not to, but there are some considerations you have to think about when you're migrating to implementing. It's not just, you can certainly just sort of get all the benefits and we'll start tracking on different areas, but there are considerations that if you're going to start intentionally using it, you should be considerate of. Just things as you get out the gate, like making sure your Metastore configuration set up, making sure that you have cross-domain identity management, things around role-based access control. These are all things you have to consider. I don't want to get in the weeds in some of the considerations around Unity stores actually for a single tenancy. A couple examples that you should be heads up on that, like Metastore is only one per region. So if you are a scaled data team, there are considerations to think about when you're migrating up into using Unity Store. So it's not just a total point and click lift and shift. There's some considerations about architecture. But if you're greenfield and you're coming in, putting this on still sits with the side of the security protocol. It actually helps a lot with thinking about governance and compliance requirements. So noting that pretty much Unity Catalog is going to be coupled with Databricks going forward. When we soon talk about Databricks, we're talking about Unity Catalog implied, and they're at a point in 13.1 now where it's becoming that's the version that we're at, and we're coming out with a pretty standard that's established with it being ubiquitous to Databricks, but its consideration should be make sure you implement it well and know how to use it, though it should be something you're using for kind of data management going forward. So I think that's a good introduction around a lot of what we're using here and why it's an interesting tool and has a lot of benefits. But I'd like to show some actual examples. And William's been working, a number of our travel and hospitality clients. We've been helping think about how to manage their data and get some more insights, especially a lot of what we have there is IoT and third-party data sources and internal proprietary operational data being merged together. And we actually need to migrate or use that system across a bunch of different business units, whether it's marketing or pricing solutions or recommenders. There's a whole bunch of different applications of it. And so we can't show proprietary data, so we are using kind of dummy data today. But I'd love, William, if you could walk us through a couple of the features and showcase this in actuality a little bit more applied scenario example here, if possible.
Yeah, definitely. That would be awesome. So what we'll do here is I'll pull up my screen and we'll jump into just a general overview of the Unity catalog and what that looks like. And then we can dive deeper from there into the different sections inside of the Unity catalog. So when you first get into the Databricks environment here, you'll have the catalog that's on the left sidebar. And when you open that up, that's where you're going to get that initial access to all of the different catalogs that you have. And as you mentioned previously, in that convention of level 1 is your catalog, level 2 is your schema, and level 3 is your table. We'll see that here as we start to expand that. So here we have the catalog. We have all of our individual schemas that are tied to that catalog. And then within that travel demo, which we'll jump into here shortly, we can see that we have the individual tables there, which are the lowest level of that Metastore catalog. And with that, you can also set user access at the catalog level. You can set it at the schema level, or you can also set it at the table level. So
that goes back to that role, the RBAC, that role-based access control and architecting, kind of where you think about different hierarchy levels of access control. Just a quick interjection. They are in process on, it's not released yet, but they are doing attribute role-based access or attribute based access control. And so ABAC is in development. It's an exciting feature as you think about where we're looking at future access controls. It's a very powerful level for kind of cross-domain sharing. Again, still in development, so it's not released for public review, but just to note that it's been tracking that feature. So RBAC is a plenty robust architecture for security, but ABAC coming soon.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, I know previously to Unity Catalog inside of Databricks, there were some data sharing concerns over how easy that was to do between different workspaces. So whether you had a development and a production environment or even different users. So what the Unity Catalog has done as well is stripped away those restrictions between data sharing, because now that it's at the catalog or the schema level, it makes it much easier to work across data between different functions within the organization as well.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think they classify that on the it involves catalogs and workspaces, but the schema level, you have your catalog, your schema level, and you can schema level at catalog and workspace level. So a lot of terms here. We can talk about this more detail, but exactly right. You have a lot of control on what you're sharing and to whom. So your groups versus your catalogs and workspaces. Yep.
Exactly. And if that was something you wanted to set, for example, the main catalog that we have here, it gives you the overview of all of the schemas that are located within that catalog. And then you can go over to your permissions tab where you're able to see who has access and who can do what, and whether or not those can be granted or revoked. As we see here, I don't have the access to grant permissions or revoke at the catalog level. But if we were to go down to the individual schema level, we can see that I have the ability to go ahead and grant and revoke permissions as needed for the specific schema.
So you can think about that example here where we're dealing with, we're working with booking data from logistics. And so you're in a marketing department, you've been granted the data that you have availability as your data lead, your analyst, and you want to share it with potentially one of your team members or a business unit rep. You would be able to do that within it with data granted permission to that business unit. Very logical way of sharing.
Yeah, so what we'll do here, as we mentioned before, we uploaded some data that we found on Kaggle that was very similar to some of our experiences with companies that we've worked with in the travel and hospitality industry. And with that, we started with three tables. We have a table that is tracking different flight information to and from in the locations. We have a table that is around the hotels that those users stayed at. And then finally, we have that users table, which tracks the company information and the individual who was doing that travel for that company. So I'm going to go back to the flights table real quick. And what we're going to see here there are a lot of different tabs across the top, which give us control within that table itself. But there are also some cool AI features. So just to hit on those real quick, the
Ooh,
AI.
AI, that's a buzzword we all like to hear about.
I know, right? But I would say Databricks has a very good use of the AI features. It's not too much AI, it's not too little, and there are definitely ways in which that can help supplement and increase your productivity with your workflows. So if we take a look at the overview here, we see we have some data for the flight code. We've got a travel code, where we're traveling from, where we're going to, different information around the flight price, the time, the distance, etc. And what we see here is if we take a look at that AI suggested comment, it's giving us a description of what it thinks it should be for the table based on the column names and the data that is available. So what we can do is we can take a look at that in preview. If we go through to the description and we find it to be fairly accurate, we can go ahead and accept that. We have the option to send feedback, or we could go ahead and decide that we want to edit this to make any minor changes. But I found it super helpful, at least in these cases that we have here for this demo data. It was actually fairly accurate in what you would want for your description. So it saves a lot of time. Yeah,
Contextual commenting, so I don't have to waste my time and it gets done. What a rarity. What a great use case.
Exactly. And the last piece there on that AI feature as well. So we see here that we have the data types that have been recorded for each of the columns. And we have two columns, one for comment and one for tags.
Oh, nice.
The comment column will be for the description of the column. So some of these are pretty simple, and we'll go ahead and hit that AI generate. That takes just a few moments there.
Wow. Right all the way down to the column level.
Exactly.
Man, beautiful.
Yes. And for the most part, these are definitely very accurate, but there are a few, it's going to take that time to go through just to make sure it is correct. Because when we do take a look at the flight type, we see that it's defining these as domestic or international. However, when we take a look at the sample data, we will see that flight type is actually referring to the class of the flight. So whether that was first class or economy. So obviously with Gen AI, there's still some caveats that you need somewhat of a human in the loop to verify that information is actually correct. But for the most part,
flag. Yeah, it's helpful.
So with that, Josh, are there any specific things within taking a look at the table view within the Unity catalog that you would like to explore a little bit deeper?
I'm curious, can I just look at the details view? I'm just curious on a couple of those features that showcase what you get with the Unity catalog.
Yes, of course. So inside of the details view, it's going to tell you whether that table is managed or not, where it is stored. It's going to give you some information on who created it, who owns it. So just a quick overview of where that information is coming from. And when we look at the permissions table, this is very similar to what we see at that catalog, at that schema level. If we wanted to go ahead and grant access, maybe somebody should have the ability to query this table, but we don't want them to have the ability to edit or do anything else. We can go ahead and grant that access at the table level here.
Amazing. What's the use with BI tool?
So you can actually then connect this directly with Tableau or Power BI if there are any visualizations you want to build based off of your tabular data.
Man, talk about how easy it is to commit an aggregation and just dump it right out to a business user, even at the analytics level. Wow.
Exactly.
Great.
And then what we have across the top to round out the options that we have here, we've got history, and that's going to go ahead and once that loads up here, you'll get to see the different versions that are within this table, some of the changes that have been made over time. So useful for that. And I'll jump to the lineage piece here in just a second. And the insights is somewhat related to that, where you're going to see how many times this table has been queried. Maybe what are some of those frequent queries, the number of users who are hitting that table. So some just useful high level information maybe what notebooks those users are using as well.
It's great.
So the last two, which are probably the most important, I would say, within this feature, is we have the lineage portion, and then we also have the quality portion, but we'll dive into the lineage portion first. And what we can see here for the flights table there are two downstream tables that this is linked with. And obviously, as we said, we uploaded the flights, the users, and the hotels table. So those are the most upstream. There is nothing further upstream than that. And what we can do here is click on the C lineage graph.
Oh,
and
man. These are so helpful. Just watching a transformation across an organization, thinking about all the stages, thinking about pricing and decimal rounding or an aggregation to compute a different stage. I can just seeing this visualized is amazing.
Exactly. And this is just the current downstream tables that they are connected with, but then you can track that lineage all the way to the end. So what we can do here is we can see that the flights table is associated with the company price analysis table. And we can go ahead and expand that down. And we see that the company price analysis table is linked to the company total table. And then there's also an analysis profile metrics, which this is linked to the quality dashboard that we'll view here shortly. And we go ahead and expand that down. We see that the company's total table is actually the furthest downstream we go. So it makes it super simple to go through this and be able to track from table to table, upstream and downstream.
Amazing.
And the other feature, this is just at the table level, but what we can do is go ahead and show our columns, and we can track this lineage on a column to column basis.
Amazing.
So for example, if we wanted to track the life cycle of trip total as it journeys from table to table, we can go ahead and click on that individual column, and then we're going to start to see the journey that data takes from upstream to downstream.
Man, lineage is so powerful from a data management perspective. Again, the fact it's passively tracking all this on a table to table and column to column level is just amazing to think about how you capture errors, or if you're auditing. I mean, this goes right back to what we're saying on the outset about auditability. Fantastic.
Yep. And even from learning the data, for example, say you have a new data engineer that comes online, or a data analyst or a data scientist trying to understand the structure that's within the database. This is really makes it self-service to look at that data, see the relationships before you have to then start going and asking questions to your other team members. And the other portion with that we're going to show here is following that trip total back is once we get to the company price analysis, we're going to go ahead and hit this upstream here. And we can see that there are two different tables that are feeding the company price analysis. We're going to open this up. And now what we see here is where that trip total was just coming from the company totals table. We can now see that the trip total is coming from two different tables. So once again, it shows just the versatility and being able to, as you said, passively track where that data is coming from. So if there is a problem in the pipeline, was it because of the company hotels table, or was it because of the flights table? It makes it super simple to find where that issue is, go and resolve.
That's incredible. Yeah, man. Upstream and downstream and investigation like that.
Yep. And the last piece that I'll show here within this view is when you click on the table headers here, it pops out another way in which you can navigate the lineage here. So if you wanted to look at flight total, instead of clicking on the individual
it will highlight it then.
Column, it will highlight both upstream and downstream points from that table automatically for you. And then if you go to the lineage portion, it will show you any tables that are associated and whether they are upstream or downstream, any notebooks that anybody is working with for that table. So maybe you wanted to go check a calculation, right?
So where it's even being consumed in the analytics side too. Wow.
That is correct. And then also, if we look at this table, you'll notice here that the company price analysis table is not associated with any queries. But if we take a look at this table, we're going to see this is not associated with any notebooks. However, it is associated with a query. And if you click on these, it's going to bring you directly to the query editor where that was written. So it makes it super easy to flow through and look at the work that's actually going on within the tables.
Having this just cooked right into your analytics workflow from, it's obviously a lot of the problems that emerge around, it's like forgetting just having multi-sources of data, which are being solved by having, single referential pointers on the data sourcing in here. You have security and share control, but then you also have this ability to audit. So you can actually scale on top of any needed architecture or improve it with visibility on the lineage side. It's so powerful.
Yep. And the last piece we can jump into here will be the quality portion, which, as we saw some of those tables inside of that lineage diagram there as well. And we'll go over into
Pretty
this
relevant when we have 50, I think it was just reported on the DBT 20 analytics engineer that we found that they spend 60 to 70% of their time doing data cleaning and processing to get to the analytics side. So a lot of effort put into quality. I'd love to see what they have in here to help.
Yes, to reduce that. I think we all want to do less cleaning and more fun, right?
Yeah, getting right to the business value. Yeah.
Exactly. So the last piece we'll show here on that table level is the quality piece. And what we did here is the CSV data we were working with was actually pretty clean, which I understand is not a representative of all real world data sets you're working with. So what we did here was upload a table that does have a number of columns that have some data quality issues, just to show the true power of the quality feature. That
Not just playing with clean data, like every bad demo ever.
Exactly. So what we can do here is I already configured this because it does take a little bit to run. What we have is this is just refreshing daily. You can set it to refresh hourly every 12 hours. So really it just depends on your workload and what the refresh rate needs to be. But once you have that stood up, and you go ahead and hit that view dashboard, what it does out of the box is it's already pre-built with all of these metrics. So you don't have to spend the time to make your own quality dashboard. It's just to create, set your schedule, and then you're going to start to see a lot of information. And obviously here we're dealing with a CSV that was uploaded, so it's not updating over time. So we're going to see that total row count, right? But that row count's not going to increase. But say you were collecting.
This is just for like batch data being delivered into your system. You would have standards are set and clear visibility. Yep.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay. And that growth over time. And also for the data set that we uploaded, it's notifying us that we have one column with a high percentage of zeros and we have two with a high percentage of nulls. So maybe when you started your data journey, this was clean and everything was looking good. But now when you come in to check your quality dashboard, you have a very high level, quick alert. Maybe I need to go inspect what that is and why that is.
It's amazing.
Yep. And so it gives you a whole suite of different metrics that you can track across all of that. And what we can see here is when we're taking a look for those high percentage of nulls, we can see that our price test 3 column is 38% nulls. So, and then down here for the price test 4 column, we're at 75% nulls. So if this was something where we needed this data to be clean, we know we have issues that we need to take care of.
You can see easy comparison.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. It pinpoints it. And then just coming down here, it gives you the ability to track drift over time. There are a number of out-of-the-box metrics that you can use to analyze that. As we travel further down, there are numeric data profiles, whether you want to look at that average, the min, the median. It gives you those descriptive summary statistics without even having to build that query. You have that information at your fingertips.
Time saver. This is fantastic.
Exactly. You can see the different distributions for the categorical data. So really, at the end of the day, it makes it super simple to manage that data quality on a table-by-table level.
Wow, that's a powerful set of features. And to get that right out the gate from from a monitoring perspective, that's pretty powerful.
Well, other than the lineage feature that we have the ability to track, if your primary keys and your foreign keys have been set up across your tables, there's a view relationships button. And what that's going to do is make it, once again, super simple in that style of drag and drop interface where you can go ahead and take a look at those relationships between the tables outside of the lineage. So just another way for data engineers, data analysts to be able to self-service and understand the relationships between the different tables within the schemas.
Man, that's exciting. A lot of great features in here. There's even more with search and discoverability across it. Some of the other things, UDF and volumes, some of these features that are coming. But what a great overview of actually working through some of the most valuable pieces of loading in data, showing quality, and working with lineage. But
I was wondering who should use it.
Yeah, and so this is going to be cooked right into Databricks going forward. So at the end of the day, we're going to be, everyone will be using it if you use Databricks. It's not really a separate conversation going forward. Ultimately, if there are other tools that are using that have comparable solutions or are already implemented in the governance space, there might be good reasons to not allow this and restrict its access. That's more of a migratory process or a tool selection process. But at the end of the day, using Databricks, there are features in here that are not a downside, like particularly the auditing, searching, and logging. Even if you use lineage elsewhere, and say you're using a DVD tool and you want to separate it out, use the metadata from this. But ultimately, even the searching and logging and auditing and access control are just going to be tools that you'll want. Some part of this is going to be part of the Databricks usage going forward.
Awesome. So it sounds like really there, if you're using Databricks and it's new, you're definitely going to use Unity Catalog. If you have something else in place, there might be some considerations that you have to take in before ultimately making a decision on whether to enable or not for Unity Catalog.
Well, this is amazing. William, thanks for taking us through this today. I appreciate it.
Of course.
A little bit more realities and what we're actually looking at. It's helpful to contextualize. I think we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive in a couple different areas in here, which are exciting to share, but I wanted to share some what is this thing as we talk to it. But there are some considerations to get to this stage in setting up environments. It definitely is a tool that is set to be in the background and offer a lot of these features, but some considerations how to set up. If you have any questions around whether this is worth using, where it should be applied, how do you get it set up optimally, feel free to get in touch and you can connect with William, one of our solutions architects, or anyone on our team to help kind of look at it in application and what use case would be most readily available. But thank you so much for the time today, William. Really appreciate walking us through, and we'll share a bit more and deep dive in a couple of the other areas as we showcase some of the features for real-time business use cases and application of these tools.